Aloha, friends and neighbors. Rollin here, a Kona astrologer. Born on the same day as Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was an astrologer. Ben would not like this. In God we trust. Ben was the guy who wrote, we hold these truths to be self-evident. He took out the references to God. Now, when we made this government in 1776, it was no different than incorporating a corporation. You have to understand, your country is not your government. No, you can rebirth your government, and the chart of the U.S. government needs to be rebirthed. It's a warlike, selfish, fearful chart. When Ben saw the chart, he said, well, I suppose the best we can do at the time. And then they went on with slavery. Yeah, the month before Ben died, they had made a law that wouldn't allow Ben to go into Congress and even use the word slavery. He was so ticked off about what they did. Country made by slave owners about slaves. And anyway, a month before Ben died, he marched into Congress, and on his birthday, on January 16th, and said, slavery, 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 and he talked all day about it. And he just let Congress know what he felt. Then he went home, and a month later, I think on February 16th, he died. So his last thing was to go in there and lecture Congress. I feel like doing that now. Anyway, you need to know that this government is not the country. And you put a CEO in charge of it now. At least, well, not you. I don't think one of my viewers would vote for Mr. King Trump, I call him, who runs the country like a CEO does, like a total dictatorship by decree. That's what he does, He's used to being a CEO. Remember the TV show where he fired people without any qualms? Anyway, things will change after August. But I wanted you to know that Ben would not like this coin, in God we trust. No. To him, it was a secular universe. He was a scientist. He was an astrologer. Religion needs to be separated from all these things. Yeah. Well, here we go. I'm going to donate I don't get paid for this. I'm going to donate my time and energy and money to a little bit of more enlightenment for you about the world you live in. And we're going to do the sky mirror and cover the last week in February in program 1055. What's going on in the sky? As above, so below, they say. Well, as above, Mars is going to go by Uranus at the end of your next week, which basically Mars is a source of ignition. Uranus is electrical things and motors. So there's going to be electric fires, and it's going to affect a lot of stuff like airplanes and trains and buses and things like that. Planes, trains, and so a hint of it will come up on the 22nd, 5 days from where you're at now, roughly. And then the main thing comes down on February 29th, when the moon sets it all off. Now, as Mars goes by there, it isn't just one day. It gets closer and closer. You're going to see a lot of people start acting up. And it's like the homeless that we're persecuting so much. They're going to defend themselves. And environmentalists are going to go on the offensive. Never have so few people done so little to kill so many. The people who deny global warming. And here King Trump is going along and fulfilling all of his promises, bang, 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 without thinking, So even the protesters in places probably aren't going to be peaceful as you get to the end of February. No. And Saturday night here, let's see, on the 25th, there's a happening, and that has to do with the moon hitting the south node and Mercury. And here's a problem for kids. Yeah, it's Saturday night, the 25th. So good time to keep your kids home, because you don't want them to calling you up and saying, I need help. So travelers and kids are having a tough time here. The good news, well, on the 26th, there's a new moon. Changes a lot of stuff. This new moon's at 8 Pisces. It's on the planet Neptune. It's in Pisces, a mutable water sign. So it's a good planting moon, especially around the 26th or March 6th. For crops that grow above the ground. Root crops, it's good on the 16th of March. And you know, a new moon on Neptune gives you new strength for religious people and oil people. Oh yeah, it's okay if they run all the pipelines. Here's a trick about pipelines. I'm an old engineer. When a pipe makes a turn, if there's any grit in the stuff that's going through it, it wears out the elbow right here. What's coming out of the North Dakota pipeline is some of the worst stuff ever, and it has a lot of little fine stuff in it. And any place that makes a turn, you know, you better have some controls, or you're going to have a leak. Anyway, enough. Let's take a look at what it's like for you. What's going on here in your next 10 days? I got the planetary pattern here. Pluto is squaring Jupiter and Uranus, and we still have policing trouble. Aggressive stuff going on there now. Quite aggressive. Mars squaring Pluto, probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday especially. So a lot of anger, a lot of uncontrollable anger about that time. But there's some up times too. So here's Jupiter trining Mercury. The kids are laughing, you know, in the middle of the week. A lot of truth and wisdom comes out, Jupiter sextiling Saturn. But it's opposing Uranus. And the rich people and the lawyers are taking down the environmentalists or the protesters or... I got very little to say about this. I got to get back up. I'm used to fighting. I haven't felt like this about the so-called government of the U.S. since the Vietnam times of the 60s, when I wanted, you know, drop out time. Don't support this government. Stand up. Well, we're going to run the moon around the edge of this planetary pattern. If you're on Thursday night, the 16th, the moon's going by a nice trine to Neptune. You probably feel kind of religious about things. All that stuff you learned in school. Patriotism, hooray! Are you being patriotic to the U.S. government, which is just a big militant corporation? You're being patriotic to the Bears and your football team, or to your church. Patriotism can be misplaced easily. Watch yourself Thursday night. See what you're patriotic towards. Where your belief is, huh? Moon in Scorpio, good time to do some deep diving. On Friday the 17th, starts with the bad square to Mercury. Hard to get going, can't communicate well. But just around lunch, just before lunch, here the moon sextiles Pluto. There's some discovery. Scorpio is the sign of Pluto. The Sherlock Holmes is out. Listen up. You may discover something new in the middle of Friday the 17th. Saturday morning, on the 18th, the moon has gone into Sagittarius. Well, sometime after breakfast, but before lunch. There's the moon in early Sag squares the sun in early Pisces. Yeah, as you're watching the show, the sun is still in Aquarius, but it's going to go into Pisces, you know, Saturday. And that new moon set it off, and it's turning over to the water signs. And but you got one more day in Aquarius when your bright thinking happens. But you won't like it much Saturday. No. Here on Saturday the 18th, the moon squares the sun. Can't get nothing done. My plans aren't working out. Ugh. Moon's in Sagittarius, a mutable fire sign. You can change it. Time you get to late. Actually, this is Sunday morning. Sunday morning, the moon is going to sextile Mercury, and there's some good thoughts, and you can talk and communicate. But as soon as you do, the moon squares Neptune, and confusion and delusion. And what did he say? You better write it down. Sunday morning, music's too loud, there's bad smells. Yeah. Sunday night, oh boy, here's a nice trine to Mars. The heroes are out. Venus. This was Venus back here. Excuse me, I misread my own writing. That's Venus. Comes in early Sag. So this is the moon trining Venus. Happens Saturday night late. Midnight 1, 2. This is actually 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. There's some love. There's some sex. There's some sweets. But the square to Neptune means problems with alcohol and delusion. So, watch out what you love Saturday night, Sunday morning. There may be some confusion about it. Sunday night, here's the moon trining Mars, and the heroes are out. Romeo is chasing, Juliet around. And late Sunday night, around 10, 11 o'clock, the moon has a nice sextile to Mercury. You can think, you can talk, you can communicate. Feels pretty good, huh? Getting organized. Monday morning, it get really organized. Here the moon sextiles Uranus. The technical things are going well. Things are self-evident, secular, not what you believe. Believing is Neptune. Thinking it out is Uranus. So you're doing that here on Monday morning. Good for you. There's also a sextile to Jupiter that comes up here in the middle of the day. And there's wisdom and lightning bolts of truth. And finally, there's a conjunction to Saturn. That happens just after lunch, before dinner. The moon going by Saturn solidifies it all. What'd the judge say? The judge okays the rich lawyers, opposing the homeless. Well, I guess you better go along. Look out. Judges aren't what you think. They're appointed. They're not elected. And you can't get them out of office once they're there. So Saturn's a dangerous character. Yeah. The argument amongst the politicians about who's on the Supreme Court goes on and on and on and on. Load up the Supreme Court, and it goes for a long time. Well, that's Monday. There's some good sense, some discovery, a lot of, the discovery is really over here. Tuesday, the moon is shifted into Capricorn. Starts with a nice sextile to the sun. My plan's going through. I feel pretty good Tuesday morning. Kind of powerful, huh? Got yourself organized? Well, Tuesday afternoon, the 21st, here's the moon squaring Venus. There's no rest, no sweets, no goodies. But just wait a little bit. Oh, there's music, religion, art, Monsanto. Yeah, that's all good stuff. It seems like it Tuesday night around dinner time. Look out. Wednesday, it changes a lot. On Wednesday, the moon's going to go by Pluto. There's going to be some panic. There's going to be the discovery you may not like. Happens in the middle of Wednesday. And here's Mars squaring the whole thing. Mars squaring Pluto, temper tantrums, road rage. Wednesday, everybody's in a hurry, and nobody's going to stop me kind of feeling. Look out. It doesn't get any better Wednesday. The moon squares Jupiter. They're all overdoing it and rationalizing what they're doing. Yeah, we threw all the homeless out. They can't live there. Oh, the lawyers say that's okay. Look out. Wednesday is the day of the devil, for what I can see. And he's angry. Yeah. Thursday, 23rd, the moon shifts into Aquarius. Feels different. We get a little more common sense going, for we're in the sign of Uranus. And common sense, like Ben Franklin said, things are self-evident, not what you have to read out of a book of religion. Friday morning, here's the sextile to Venus you've been looking for. Happens 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning Friday. Friday is Vendredi, Venus's day, Freya to a Nordic. That's the day of Venus. And so, if you're with somebody you love, Wake up early, stay in bed late Friday morning. Even Mercury stays out of your way. The kids won't bother you. Kids are happy. There's nice words. Friday morning's kind of nice. As you go along, you get to this place here where Friday night, late, early Saturday morning, the moon sextiles Venus and Mars. And what's going on here? Well, you got your Venus Friday morning. This is Mars. This is sports. Stuff like that. But, go out and be a brother because Mars is on Uranus. This is not your ordinary stuff. Here's a time when a sports figure might stand up and say, hey, what's self-evident here is we put a king in charge of our country. Look out! So, if it's unfair, it's a good time to stand up Friday night, Saturday morning. On Saturday, first half of the day, the moon's still in Aquarius, and you'll get some intellectual freedom. The last half of the day on Saturday, the moon shifts into Pisces, where the new moon is. There's the south node first. That's just after dinner. The moon goes by the south node. Oh, we all need help. Poor Pisces. A little tough, isn't it? The new moon isn't until Sunday morning, and it's very close to Neptune. And, if you're inspired and your inspiration is not driven by religious zeal, if you're inspired, let's clean up the ocean and let's stop with the pesticides. Why should we let the chemical companies and the oil companies and the big pharmaceuticals with their Neptune science run amok? Well, we let the churches do it. Why not let Monsanto do it? Excuse my pessimism. I've seen too much of this, all my life. Discovery happened Sunday night. Here's the moon sextile Pluto. You may find out things weren't quite what you thought in the morning of Sunday when everybody went to church. We all stood up and sang the same songs. When I went to church when I was 8 or 9, it was Onward Christian Soldiers. What was that? Onward Christian soldiers marching off to war. Boy, did I get brainwashed. I didn't start seeing the light till I was 35 or so. I'm sure a lot of you are laboring under the same delusions, what they taught you in school, what your culture said. Oh, Coca-Cola's okay. Hey, you got to discover it yourself. Sunday night about midnight's a good time to do some of that on the 26th when the moon sextiles Pluto. Monday on the 27th, the moon's going to go by Saturn after breakfast. The square to Saturn, and it's not going to be a real happy time. It's going to be a slow Monday, so leave a little bit early. That's the way it is right now. Here's a quick short lesson in religion. You go look at Webster's dictionary and look up the definition of heaven. And what it says is the sky. Yes, the sky. But then later on they go the abode of God, place of the dead, blissful happiness. No, it's the sky. Yes. It was a cruel joke. They took the understanding away from astrologers. And when you read Jesus, you thought he's talking about a place of clouds where there's angels? No. Heaven in Aramaic, if you go back, it actually means sky. My Father, who art in heaven? No, not heaven. He's in the sky. Yeah, the sun is up there. That's your Father. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven? No, that's not heaven. That's the sky. What happens up there with the planets and the stuff we're following on this show, as above, so below. So, it was a cruel joke when they took the meaning of this. They changed one word, and all of a sudden you got, Christianity and Jewishness and Muslims and all these people who believe in some strange place up in Up, where is heaven? Now, it's not heavens. Take it out of the Bible. Just read the Bible again. When you see the word heavens, put in sky. You'll start to understand Jesus was an astrologer. Yes, he was. I don't like this man, King Trump. I've always had trouble with Leo risings. They produce a lot of tall men that strut around and get promoted or take leadership positions they don't deserve. So this 29-degree Leo rising, I don't like him much. And he's got Mars right there. I really don't like Mars in Leo. King Trump is an aggressive, self-centered person. He does have a Uranus-Jupiter trine. I'm hoping that, something will come up. But very interesting thing, when I started looking at his progressions, first thing came up, the moon hit Venus January 20th. That's when he was inaugurated. And Venus happens to rule his 10th house. So on January 20th, Mr. Trump was really worried about his career choices. That was his day of worry. And he is right to be worried. He can't be a CEO king and rule this government. No. It's a Gemini government. Well, it is a Gemini country. Well, anyway, I had a lot more to say about this. But I tell you one thing. There's a full solar eclipse on this rising sign in August. And he's never going to be the same if he survives. So you better start taking a look at Pence and some of that stuff. I decided to check up on it a little bit. Well, the solar eclipse, the path runs pretty much right through the U.S. And there it is, the total eclipse, 75% eclipsed. And this is the main place. So this eclipse is American-made, okay? Mr. Trump is certainly part of it all. I decided to check up on it again, and one of the things I've learned is the power of solar returns if they're precessed. And whoa, have I proved it in my own life and with some of my family. So here's the solar return of the U.S. government now. This is not the country. You are not your football team, okay? You are not your corporation. This is a big corporation. Here's the chart of it. Here's the solar return of it. Moved to Washington. It's not Hawaii, excuse that. We're in Washington, D.C. And what does it look like? Now this is July. The eclipse happens in August. And one of the main features of this solar return is here's the moon and Pluto here in the 12th house. And it is opposing the sun and Mars. The sun is usually the father, huh? Yeah. And with Mars conjunct kind of describes King Trump, doesn't it? So what's this? Here's the moon Pluto. Here's somebody, possibly a lady or just a public member. This is an employee. Moon rules the 6th house. And there's going to be a trauma. And it's an opposition. And so look out. This is a this is a time we're going to remember a lot in August of 2017. And the solar return says we're stuck with going over it and over it and over it for a full year until July 2018. Well, a little more on King Trump. One of his foibles is the things he says. And in his natal chart, we got Mercury squaring Neptune. This is confused speech. Mercury, squaring Neptune. So, we can tell now when this is set off because it runs from 6 to 9 degrees of cardinal signs. Now it happens, there's some new moons at 8 degrees. And when a new moon happens in cardinal signs, the next month following, he's got his foot right in his mouth. He's saying things that, are confused, very confused words, and it's a real problem. So, we've got one here, March. Well, look, I guess the one you'll remember the most started on the new moon at the end of December. And it was a new moon at 8 Capricorn. And that set it off pretty strong. New moon at the end of January kind of takes him out of it. So this month of January, he had his foot in the mouth all the time. Yep. And hopefully, he'll get it more straight, and he'll start speaking good words on the new moon in Pisces, which trines King Trump's Mercury, and his mind gets straight. By the way, Mars is going to hit his Mercury-Neptune square. February 4th to February 8th, you'll see him angry. And again, it hits it on June 13th to June 16th. 2 small periods where Mr. Trump better ask himself what he's protecting before he talks. This may not get published in West Hawaii today, so I'm going to read it to you. Letter to the editor from Rollin Frost, MS, Environmental Health. The Roundup nightmare continues. The latest research published in Nature magazine shows very low levels of exposure for months and months to Roundup causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Bear in mind, the applied liquid dries to a very small flake. These dry little crystalline flakes cannot kill weeds anymore, but get blown into the air and into your lungs. Having trouble with your old alcohol drinking habit? You may have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We already learned Roundup and its additive IPOE attacks placental and umbilical cells causing miscarriages. Now seems ultra-low doses cause liver disease. Published January 9th, the authors of the study say as many as 25% of our population might be affected. We should all thank ex-council member Margaret Will for her bill Stop the County from using this sneaky, hurtful herbicide. Yeah, I can see it on the upper highway now, where roadside weeds are being weed-eaten and cut, not chemically killed. Controlling weeds by trimming doesn't leave dried out dead vegetation along our roads, which greatly adds to the fire hazards. Each year, it may mean a few more folks get work cutting and trimming weeds, but that's really a benefit in these hard times. Our roads will look more beautiful. Add a little flower seed, our environment will feed bees and butterflies and bloom into the pretty environment befitting our paradise island of the Pacific. Visitors and locals will appreciate our island more. Thank you, Margaret, and the County Council. Less disease, less fire hazard, and more beautiful roadways. Now if we can just get these absentee property owners of vacant lots and vacation rentals to stop spraying. It might cost a little more for your yard service, but we can all breathe easier.